You ever feel like you're just drowning in information, but still thirsty for real understanding?
Yeah, happens all the time.
That's sort of why we're here. Today, we're diving deep into the captivating world of sumo, Japan's national sport.
Hmm.
It's the spectacle, raw power mixed with centuries of tradition. And trust me, there's way more going on than you might think at first glance.
Absolutely. It's layered.
Our main source for this exploration is Jay Sargent's book, Sumo, the Sport and the Tradition. Now, he was a sports editor writing this back in the mid 20th century. This copy's a fifth printing from 1963.
Right, so it's a snapshot from that era.
Exactly. And his goal was to make this often kind of misunderstood sport accessible.
Yeah, and Sargent's work gives us this really fascinating lens, doesn't it? He captures not just the facts, but also how people, saw and appreciated sumo back then.
Mm.
What's really insightful is seeing how certain traditions were already so established, so revered all those decades ago.
Okay, so let's unpack what we're trying to do here. Our mission today isn't just skimming the surface of sumo.
Right.
We want to pull out the core stuff, its origins, which are pretty ancient, the really demanding training, the unique way competitions are structured, and those deep cultural roots, the things that make it so much more than just, well, a sport.
Yeah, think of it as a shortcut, maybe, to getting the essence of sumo.
Exactly. It's a shortcut to the heart of it.
And we're not just going to, list facts. We want to connect them, explore why they matter, and hopefully give everyone a richer appreciation for this pretty unique tradition.
Okay, let's do it. So, journeying back, way back, Sargent points to the 16th century, the time of Oda Nobunaga. That seems to be a key moment for professional sumo starting to emerge.
It's interesting, isn't it, that a major historical figure like Nobunaga is linked to sumo becoming more formalized. It kind of suggests the sport already had some cultural clout.
Hmm.
And while that era is important, those early wrestler stories, they often blend, folklore with actual history, like that story of Hajikami and Omi.
Oh, Hajikami. Yeah, Sargent tells this wild tale. This wrestler, apparently so strong, normal refereeing just wasn't enough. They had to actually tie a rope around his waist.
Yeah, yeah. It paints this picture of just raw, untamed strength, doesn't it?
Totally. But despite being this powerhouse, he wasn't named the first grand champion.
No, that title, or at least the first claim to it, Sargent gives to Akashi Shigenosuke. That's 17th century. But he also says the details are pretty hazy.
It makes you wonder how they even decided who got such a big title back then. What were the rules?
Exactly. What were the criteria?
Yeah.
Then we jump forward a bit to Tanakaze Kajinosuke, late 18th century, a farmer.
Right, and Sargent describes him as a real phenomenon. Get this. 183 wins, only 12 losses, 25 ties in just 8 years.
That's incredible dominance. Almost unbelievable in any sport, really.
Yeah.
It really speaks to how someone from, a humble background could achieve amazing things in sumo, just through talent and sheer hard work. Sargent quotes that, saying, "There never was the equal of Tanakaze, before or since. It shows the massive impact he had, maybe set the bar for everyone after him."
And then there's Raiden Tame Emon, late 18th, early 19th century. Huge guy, 6'3", 370 pounds.
Wow.
Another amazing record, but never made grand champion. Sargent says the reason was he roughed it up too much.
See, that's fascinating. What does that tell us?
Yeah, what does that mean? Expectations beyond just winning.
That's a crucial point, I think. It suggests that even way back then, being a Yokozuna grand champion wasn't just about winning bouts.
Right.
There were probably expectations about decorum, technique, how you presented yourself as a champion. Raiden's story makes you think about those ideals and how they might have changed over time.
It's really striking comparing these old giants to wrestlers today, isn't it? Sargent hints that wrestlers just got bigger over the generations.
Oh, yeah.
You try to imagine a modern Yokozuna next to Tanakaze or even Raiden. It's a huge difference. Was the focus always on size, or that more recent?
That's a great question. Probably a mix of things, right? Better nutrition, maybe letting people grow bigger, and maybe just a shift in thinking about what makes a dominant sumo physique.
Makes sense. Okay, let's pivot a bit. Who actually becomes a sumo wrestler? Sargent notes that, okay, baseball might be bigger in the cities in Japan, but sumo holds strong in rural areas, especially places less hit by Western influence.
Why do you think that regional split holds up?
Well, Sargent mentions the sort of lingering influence of feudalism in those regions.
Ah,
Traditional arts like sumo probably just had deeper roots there, kept their appeal maybe more strongly than newer Western sports, tied to cultural identity, perhaps.
that makes sense. And then there's the practical side, the cost.
Yeah, Sargent really emphasizes this. Sumo is ridiculously cheap to start. Basically, all you need is a loincloth, a mawashi.
That's a huge difference from sports needing tons of expensive gear.
So,
That accessibility probably made sumo a real option for people from, poorer backgrounds, especially in those rural areas we talked about.
right.
It was a path, maybe, for social mobility based purely on physical ability and dedication. No big financial hurdle.
Sargent also points out this interesting geographical pattern for grand champions. A lot come from Hokkaido and the northeastern districts.
Right, the snowy parts.
Yeah, and he suggests the harsh winters help develop strong hips, which are obviously key in sumo.
Huh. Like the environment shaping the athletes.
Kind of. He mentions diverse backgrounds too, fishermen, mountain dwellers.
It's a cool idea, that connection, the demands of certain lifestyles, fishing, mountain life, enduring cold winters. Maybe they unintentionally build the exact physical traits needed for sumo.
And the entry requirements themselves, Sargent notes they gradually increased. By 1957, minimum was 5'7" height, 166 pounds weight.
Makes you wonder what the minimums are now, seeing how big some wrestlers are today.
Right. It shows how the sport evolved. Maybe a bigger emphasis on sheer size now. Reflects changes in population, strategy.
Probably all of the above.
And Sargent includes some of those larger-than-life stories, too, didn't he? Like Eiffel Tower, Uchiyama.
Huh, yeah. And the mythical Azora, supposedly over 7 feet tall back in the early 19th century.
Crazy. But Sargent wisely adds, take those old claims with a grain of salt.
Good advice.
Yeah,
Without strict records back then, stories get exaggerated, become folklore.
yeah.
A 7-foot wrestler is a great image, but yeah, got to rely on the verifiable stuff.
Okay, so let's picture this young prospect, maybe like Sargent's example. Taro, a farmer's son. He gets scouted on a provincial tour, ends up in a sumo gym, a stable in Tokyo's Ryogoku area. What's waiting for him? Sargent calls it pretty severe, even feudalistic.
Yeah, that hierarchy in the stable is key.
Mm.
Sargent lays out this strict life for recruits, fetching, caring for the seniors, making food, cleaning. It's total immersion.
And he mentions the master's quarters are off limits to women.
Right, reflecting certain older traditions. It's a world where your personal needs are secondary to the group, to the established order. You're there to learn and serve.
Sounds incredibly tough. And the training itself, Sargent describes it as just relentless. Starts before dawn, empty stomach, then intense warm-ups, then practice bouts all morning, still no food. What's the thinking behind that?
Well, that early training, empty stomach, it's meant to build resilience, right? Both physical and mental toughness.
Yeah.
Pushing limits, building willpower.
Wow.
And the hierarchy extends to meals, too. Seniors eat first, juniors serve them, reinforces respect, discipline. It's all part of the system.
It really paints a picture of just complete dedication. Sargent does add that older, higher-ranked wrestlers, especially if they're married, might get to live outside the stable.
Yeah, that makes sense. The intense Kuno life is crucial for young guys, but veterans probably need more independence, more personal space as their lives change.
Okay, let's shift to the main event, the grand tournaments, the basho. Sargent says there are 6 a year, big cities. And they evolved, right? From shorter events on temple grounds to these 15-day marathons.
Exactly. That growth reflects sumo getting more professional, more popular over time. And yeah, even for a rookie, 15 days of competition takes incredible stamina and focus. It's a real grind.
And the stage itself, the dohyo, the ring, Sargent describes it, raised platform, packed earth, straw bales around it. I always loved the awning above, the one with the 4-colored tassels for the seasons. Such a beautiful symbolic detail.
Literally is.
He mentions those tassels replaced colored poles in 1952. Interesting how even old traditions get updated.
Absolutely. Those visuals are so important to the whole atmosphere of the tradition. The dohyo itself is seen as like a sacred space.
So how do wrestlers climb this ladder? Sargent maps out the ranking system pretty clearly. It's a strict pyramid, starts low, goes up through levels like Juryo, Makuuchi, then the Sanyaka ranks Komusubi, Sekiwake, Ozeki, and finally the peak, Yokozuna, grand champion.
It's a long, tough climb. And you can even see the rank in their hairstyle, right?
Yep.
The top knot gets more elaborate as they move up.
Oh yeah, the chômage.
It's a subtle but clear status marker.
And it's all based on how you do in those tournaments. Win-loss records drive promotion and demotion. Good tournament, you move up. Bad one.
You can slide right back down. Constant pressure to perform.
Definitely.
And the prestige at the top, especially ozeki and yokozuna, is huge.
Hmm.
Sargent points out less than half of ozeki ever make yokozuna. And once you're a yokozuna, you're never demoted, even if you start losing.
Wow, never demoted.
It's a lifetime rank. Carries immense responsibility, huge expectations.
What about prizes? Sargent mentions the big one, the Emperor's Cup, plus other awards for performance, skill, fighting spirit, and all those sponsor banners you see.
Yeah, and that interesting detail Sargent includes, the prize envelopes don't actually have cash or checks.
Oh, right, they have catalogs.
Exactly. Catalogs to choose items from. Can be pretty valuable stuff, apparently. A mix of tradition and material reward.
Sargent even gives us a snapshot ranking list from summer 1957. You see the ranks, the wrestlers' names, their win-loss records in brackets from the last tournament.
Yeah, it really brings that whole competitive structure to life. You see who's rising, who's maybe struggling. It shows how dynamic it all is. 15 days of intense battles changing the hierarchy.
Okay, now for something Sargent calls psychological warfare. That whole pre-bout ritual. He argues a sumo match is way more than physical. It's psychological, too.
The Shikiri Naoshi is
Yeah.
probably the most iconic part visually.
Right. The flexing, the stomping, scattering the salt, the squatting,
Right.
all with this intense focus.
And the referee's right there guiding it. It's got this palpable tension.
And for the top guys, there's a strict 4-minute time limit for all that. It's not just stalling. Sargent says it's about reading your opponent, gauging their confidence, trying to figure out their plan before the clash.
Exactly. A silent battle of wills before the physical fight. Sargent also notes that statistically, the wrestler who lands the first solid hit at the tachi-ai, the initial charge,
They have an advantage, right?
yeah, that split second often sets the tone, can even decide the whole thing.
Of course, there are rules. Forbidden moves, taboos. Sargent lists them. No fists, no karate chops, no hair-pulling, eye-poking, throat grabs.
No kicking, no grabbing the front part of the mawashi, the matatamitsu.
All right, break those rules, you're disqualified instantly. Shows there's a definite code, even in such a physical clash.
It does. It emphasizes fair play and tradition, even amidst the power.
Okay, technique time. Sargent breaks it down into 2 main approaches, grappling and slapping. He says the connoisseurs, the real fans, often prefer the grappling. Why is that?
Well, getting a solid grip on the opponent's mawashi, the belt, is key in grappling. It gives you leverage, control, allows for all sorts of throws and moves that show off technique and skill, not just brute force. It's seen as more strategic, maybe, more refined.
But Sargent also talks about the slapping maneuver, the supari. Says it's a fast, effective attack.
Quick bursts of open hand strikes.
And other techniques like hatakikomi, the slap down, or ashitori, the leg pick.
Ah.
Sounds like there are a lot of ways to win about.
The book even has illustrations of different throws, kimarite, shihobet. It's amazing how many official techniques there are. Oh, and Sargent notes, in the pictures, the winner always wears the black band. Useful tip.
Huh, good to know. He mentions common tactics too, like yorikiri, just forcing the opponent out using your grip and weight. Simple but effective.
Very common.
And then the spectacular ones, like uchari, the backward pivot throw. You see those? Sometimes they're amazing. Sargent says listing all the techniques, throws, pulls, pushes, slaps, trips, would take a whole book.
It really underscores the depth of skill involved. A bout might be over in seconds, but mastering those moves takes years. It's all about leverage, balance, timing.
Grand champions, yokozuna. Sargent really stresses how rare they are. Only a handful throughout history. What makes them so special?
He tells stories about some mid-century yokozuna, Chiyonoyama, Tochinishiki, Wakanohana, gives us a peek into their careers.
Right, like Chiyonoyama rising fast but being hesitant about the promotion.
Yeah. Shows the immense pressure and responsibility that comes with the title. It's not just about being strong.
And he mentions past legends too, like Fudabayama. His
Yeah.
long winning streak. It's almost mythical.
Unbelievable record. Sargent even includes the full list of yokozuna up to when he wrote the book. It gives you that sense of history, the lineage, and some use different ring names too.
So beyond the fights themselves, Sargent emphasizes the pageantry, says it's huge in sumo, compares it to Japanese festivals, kabuki theater, connects it back to sumo's religious historical roots.
Yeah, the doshiori is a great example. The ring entering ceremony for the top guys. They wear those amazing kishamowashi aprons.
They're really elaborate, colorful ones.
Exactly. Sargent says they can be incredibly expensive, like works of art. Wrestlers often have a whole collection. It's a real visual feast.
And the Yokozuna's entrance is even grander. They have attendants, the suhare, the takimochi, the sword bearer.
And the yokozuna wears that thick white robe, the suna, a clear symbol of their top status. Very powerful imagery.
Their ring entering ceremony, too, with the clapping. And they choose a style, right? Unryu or Shiranui?
Yeah, the defensive dragon ascending style or the offensive sea of fire style.
Yeah.
It's deeply symbolic, shows tradition, but also lets the yokozuna put their own stamp on it.
And then at the very end of the day, there's the bow twirling ceremony, the Yumatori Shiki. Sergeant links it back to Oda Nobunaga's victory.
Right, performed by a designated wrestler now.
Yeah.
It's like this graceful final note to the day's action. All these ceremonies, these rituals, they really elevate sumo beyond just sport. Connects it to Japan's history, its culture.
Let's talk about the ref, the gyoji. Sergeant points out how unique and respected they are, very different from refs in other sports.
Definitely. Their robes alone tell a story. The colors indicate their rank, with imperial purple being the highest.
And younger ones ref barefoot.
Yeah, fascinating detail. It mirrors the wrestler's ranking system.
Sergeant lists their duties, announcing wrestlers, reciting records, giving instructions during the shikiri naoshi and the bout. He mentions the famous referee families too, Kimura and Shikimori.
And surprisingly modest salaries, considering how vital they are.
And then there are the judges, the shimpan, sitting around the ring. They can step in if it's close.
Right. They confer and can order a rematch. A tori naoshi adds another layer of oversight, ensures fairness.
Sergeant has this whole chapter on the spirit of sumo, and it might seem odd, but he talks a lot about cleanliness and gentlemanly conduct.
Yeah, it's a striking contrast, isn't it? The salt throwing for purification, rinsing mouths, wiping sweat.
And if there's blood, they stop and clean the ring thoroughly.
Exactly. He contrasts it with other sports. Points out there's no arguing with the gyoji. Wrestlers are courteous, help opponents up after a fall.
And they bow to the ring when entering and leaving. It shows this deep respect for the tradition, the space, the opponent.
Kyo does.
Even the names they use, the shikona, the ring names, Sergeant explains they aren't just random. They often pick elements from their hometown, their stable, their mentor.
Right, like common endings. Yama for mountain, gawa for river, or prefixes like nishi for brocade, waka for young.
He gives examples like futabayama, wakanohana, explaining where they came from, connects them to places or ideas. And apparently no Japanese equivalent for just shouting, "Ya big bum."
Hey, probably for the best.
Yeah.
Adds to the decorum.
So what about life outside the ring, off duty? Sergeant gives us a peek. Says the young guys, lower ranks, don't get much money. Their allowance is pretty meager.
Yeah, sounds like a real financial commitment early on. Total dedication required.
But he clarifies, higher ranks, makuuchi and up, they earn significantly more, allows for a better lifestyle. And support from patrons, fan clubs, that helps too.
Makes sense. The rewards come with success.
Sergeant even shares little bits about Grand Champion's personal lives, marriages, hobbies. Reminds you they're people under those massive physiques. And of course he mentions chanko nabe, the wrestler stew. Insane calorie count.
Gotta fuel the machine. It does humanize them, though. Shows the lives behind the legends, the sacrifices made.
Finally, Sergeant reflects on the charm of sumo. He gets that Westerners might first see it as, well, grotesque or bizarre.
Yeah, the size, the ritual,
Yeah.
it can be jarring if you're not used to it.
But he urges people to look past that, appreciate the ritual, the shikiri naoshi, see the blend of color, tradition, and that incredible raw power.
And he really emphasizes the cleanliness, the courtesy again.
Yeah.
Contrasts it favorably with maybe some rougher aspects of Western combat sports.
Yeah.
It's about different cultural expressions of competition and respect.
And he finishes by painting this picture of the tournament's drama. 15 days building to a climax, top wrestlers facing off, often Yokozuna versus Yokozuna in the final bout.
Followed by the Emperor's Cup presentation, the national anthem.
Yeah.
It really is a grand spectacle.
Yeah, it captures sumo as this whole cultural event, not just a sport.
Definitely.
So, wrapping up this deep dive into Sergeant's sumo, the sport, and the tradition, what really sticks out for me may be the surprisingly early roots back in the 16th century, and that incredibly strict hierarchical life in the sumo stable, such a unique world.
Yeah, and for me, it's that blend. The synthesis of just immense physical power with such deep, pervasive tradition and ceremony in every single aspect.
Right.
What I'm left thinking about is, how does this ancient tradition keep its hold today in our super modern world? What is it about this specific mix, the sport, the ritual, the culture, that still pulls people in, even people totally outside Japan?
That's a great question to ponder. What makes it endure? If we've sparked anyone's curiosity, definitely check out some videos of modern sumo tournaments. See it in action.
Yeah, absolutely. And Sargent's book or other reading can definitely give you an even richer perspective.
For sure. Well, until our next deep dive, keep exploring.